Hi everyone. In this lecture, let's go through the data that we'll be analyzing when we're creating our analysis, reports, looks, and dashboards. Okay? So what I've done, again, to simulate everything that we've been doing is I've created some fake data. Okay? And I just want to go through that fake data so you have a familiarity with what we're working with. Okay? So you can find this Excel file as well in the resources or reference material section of this lecture. It'll also be in another lecture that's called reference material that will include this file as well as the lookml file too. Okay. So what I've done over here is I've created a fake company called Element Rental. What they do is they simply rent out heavy equipment to companies. Okay, and they have offices all over the US. So the first table simply tells us the products that are available to be rented. You can see here that there are 11 products: back truck, bulldozer, compactor, crawlers, things like that, right? For example, they might have like 20 bulldozers, right? But all of them have a product ID of 2 and a product name of bulldozer. And each product also gets a category. There can be medium products, light products, or heavy products. And you also know what the hourly price for rent is for every product. So for example, if a customer wants to rent out a compactor, it would be $1,904 per hour, $1,904 per hour. Okay, so that's product. We also have a table that lists all of our salespeople. And we can see we have 100 salespeople. We have their first name, last name, what level they are. There are about 10 seniors and the rest are juniors. We know their age. We know what function they serve. So some are closers, some are executors, some are direct salespeople, some are lead salespeople, and so on and so forth. And we also know the office that they belong to. Now, this is the office that they belong to, not necessarily the office that the customer is in or anything like that. So we know that Jamie is in office 4 and Tudor is in office 10. Okay? The next is our list of customers. This company has 20 customers. I know 20 is not a lot, but this is a B2B type business, and there's not a lot of companies that would rent out heavy equipment like compactors and things like that. So we have their customer ID, we have their customer company name. As you can see, when I was making this fake data, I had lots of fun. Trashly, Fright Park, Super Rig, Suck It, Stack It. I don't know, I just have fun with it. And then you also know what the customer type is. So Trashly is a long haul customer, whereas Bumper Truck is a medium haul customer, for example. Okay? Next, we have offices about we have data about our offices. So we know we have 10 offices. Each office has a name. Each office has a zip code, and we know who the head salesperson ID is for each office. Okay? So we know, for example, salesperson 45, Tamara, is an office ID 9, and office ID 9 is LA. So we know that Tamara is the head of LA, or not the head, sorry, but is part of the LA office. Okay? Then we go to our biggest data set, which is transaction. Okay? Each row here represents a transaction, or basically like a buying or selling. Okay? Over here, what we see is basically a list of transactions, and for each transaction ID, so for each transaction, we know the date it occurred, what product was sold, who sold it, the salesperson ID, who it was sold to, the customer, in what office it was sold in, the number of hours that the product was rented out for, and the total sales. So for example, transaction 1, basically the rental happened on June 6th, product ID 6. So a dump truck was rented out to, sorry, not to just yet. A dump truck was rented out by Ida Branford, okay, to Go Hall, in the Orlando office. Okay? So dump truck sold by Ida to GoHaul in the Orlando office. And this product was sold for 5 hours. So we know product ID 6 is $1948 per hour. So when it was all calculated times 5 hours, we got 9,740. Okay? Perfect. We also know the transaction state as well. It was Florida. So we know where the actual, right? Because it can be different, right? The office ID is simply where the location of the office that was transacted, but the transaction state might be different. So these two are not necessarily going to be the same, even though this is Orlando and this is Florida. That's coincidence. These two might be different, right? The office ID is where the transaction was written. This is where the product was actually delivered to, right? So for example, over here, office ID 4 and transaction 2, office ID 4 is Detroit, but the transaction state is Iowa, which means that the contract was written in Detroit because that's where the transaction happened, but then the equipment was delivered to Iowa. Okay, so that's the difference. And perfect. The next thing and the last what we have is the inventory. So all of our inventory, and it looks like we have about 200 pieces of inventory, is tagged. Okay. From 1 to 200, and each piece tells us what product ID is, the status of it, so if it's held by someone or if it's open to be sold, the condition it's in, which is a number between 0 to 100, 100 being high condition, 0 being low condition, and the office that it's currently in. So for example, inventory ID 1 is a bulldozer that is being held. It's in pretty good condition. Held means it's with a customer right now, and it's part of office ID 1, which is New York City. Okay, so that's all the data. And again, this is fairly important because remember my first key success factor, don't just watch, which basically means that as we analyze and create views on our data, we want to be working with the same data, and we'll be working with Element Rentals data, and it's good for you to know the data you're actually working with in case you have any questions about the fields and items that we'll be using. Awesome.